Hi everyone, it's Kim. Thanks for joining me. You are either watching this video the day before Halloween, the day of Halloween, or post-Halloween. And even though we are so close to having this year's holiday season for Halloween being over, I couldn't resist one more week of fun. All of my sayings come from Pinterest, and I've collected some of these over the years. Some of them are real recent, but that's been my inspiration for this week. And I want to start here with this one. I'm here to decorate your house for October. I love this spider, and there's some truth in that. If we let the cobwebs accumulate, I always say, hey, I'm getting ready for Halloween. So I knew I had this wonderful spider to put on here, and I just went with this. This really got my creative juices flowing. So the spider, probably the best in my stash, is from Tim Holtz's Retired Collection Vault Gothic Portraits. Love that spider. Then the alphabet, the font that I use for a lot of my cards are again from Tim, the alphanumeric tiny type upper and lower letters. So I use this in a lot of them. Now, if I were going to do 10 of these cards, I would not be cutting out these letters. I would be using my computer to print off all these sentiments, and I did on one of them, however many I needed. And then I used the Better Press plate, the spiderweb backgrounds. I love this. So if I'd printed this off on the computer, I would have done that. Then I would have better pressed it, or there's tons of stamps of webs out there. I would have used maybe a lighter ink and then just stamped my web on there. So a couple different ways if you don't want to cut out all those letters. And finally, for the background from All in Create is Retro Number. So this is the landscape view of what I consider a negative. I love this die. So this got me started. Love the spider. I can identify with leaving some cobwebs up saying, hey, I'm getting ready for Halloween. Another one people could maybe identify. Hocus Pocus, I need coffee to focus. Again, not scary, but a fun take on Halloween. I knew I had this Hocus Pocus in a die set from Tim for sentiments. And this is called Bold Text Halloween. And what I actually did was I took all of these out. I used Hocus Pocus. I knew I could make focus using these words. I found the F closest to the size that I had here. And I only say that because it's not perfect, but had I not specifically pointed that out, you may not have caught on to that. I need coffee. I believe Feeling Wicked was the little die that I used for almost everything in those two words. I had to go find the O, which I could find another O and another sentiment that matched the height of these letters. And then two, I think that's from Toil and Trouble. I had several options there for the two. And then I knew exactly what I was going to do for this coffee cup, and that's from the Craftoween from Spellbinders Day 8. I had this in there before. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, but when I read this, I'm like, that works perfect for my skull coffee cup, and then the steam of the ghost, which is my steam, and then my bat stirring stick. So again, maybe you have a coffee loving friend who loves Halloween, and this might just be perfect for them. Now, the next one I can sort of relate to. Don't even act like you didn't have candy for breakfast. I don't know if you're guilty of that, but maybe not in the recent years have I done that, but I'm sure in past years I have. This one, I did not to cut out all the letters out of a die. I thought, no way, I'm going to do this on the computer. So that's what I did. And tried a couple different fonts, a couple different sizes. This was my test one that I did before I decided this is the one I was going to do. And I pulled out an ancient embossing folder called Fabric Weave from Spellbinders. So this may look, this style may look familiar to some of you. I knew I had a paper, like a crumpled paper one, and I could not find it, but this one works just as well. So after I printed this out, I used antique linen just to put on lightly, just to kind of make it look like old paper. Then I used Puma Stone on the embossed side. So I wanted more of the side with the ridges up, and I just put a light coat of ink, just took my little ink pad, my little ink cube, and ran over it. Stuck my paper in there, face down on the ink, ran it through, and then it transferred just a little bit of that ink there, just to make it look like it's a little more aged. So again, if you've got any kind of embossing folder, if you like that old paper look, check out and see what designs you have. That was pretty easy to do. I could crank a lot of those out. And then this candy, I knew I had this die. I love corn candy. Again, from Tim, Trick or Treat. It's a colorized die, so this is retired. But a lot of times if you get online and look, you can find these somewhere out there that someone is selling if you can't find them at your local store, since they are retired. But nice big corn candy. Maybe you're into candied apples. There's another one. Maybe you have a totally different die with some candy in it. Perfect for somebody who has a sweet tooth and might just be enjoying some candy for breakfast or for lunch. Okay, this next one I loved as well. So this is In a World Full of Princesses. Open it up. Be a Witch. So the colors are more on the princess side than the witch side. Ironically, I was making this when Dancing with the Stars was on, and all the music they were dancing to that night came from the movie Wicked. So I was like, oh, maybe I really should have put Elphaba on here as my witch. Instead of a pink witch, I could have made a green witch. So whatever you might be inspired to do. The witch obviously is a cute witch, not scary. And most of the parts that went with her are from a vault die. This is called Vault Wicked. So I've got the cat and the pumpkin, the broom, the witch, and the little bottle, all from the set. Now these all came from other sets that Tim had out. The Toil and Trouble has 2 witches on it. Again, I'm not sure what size. I don't think there's that big of a difference. In the Toil and Trouble set, this witch is flipped facing the other way, and then the second witch is flying on the broomstick. And the cat is included in the original die. So this pumpkin comes from somewhere else, and this hat that I used on the inside comes from another die set separate from this, but from Tim as well. So you can, mix and match what you have. Again, for my letters, I use the tiny type for that. And again, this is a lighter take on being a witch for Halloween. Again, I think that was sort of fun. And then, of course, I had to make a couple of them with Karen Berniston's mechanical dies. And we'll start with this one. I'm going to just move the bottom here, and she's flying around in front of what I decided was going to be my blood red moon here. And I played with this a lot because I kind of wanted the witch to be going side to side. And I think now that I'm done, I'm like, okay, I know what I can do differently next time. But this big red moon, a while back, I told you that I was at my mom's house, and I used one of her dies, and it's called Lunarscape, I believe, from Sizzix. So it's like a cover plate die. So I did that again. I knew where hers was. So when I was over there recently, I die cut another piece of paper, and then I just die cut it using a round nesting die set, just so I'd have a nice big full moon. And my bats, I'll show you where those came from in a minute. The witch, I knew I had her from years past, from Spellbinders, called Witch in Heels. And here I have found my note. The die for this is a lunar mask for the moon, and that is retired, but I have searched for it online, and I have found there was a store that had it, an online store that still had that in stock. The Witch in Heels, there's more than just the witch, but I just needed her silhouette, so that's all I cut out. I don't need to layer up the hat and the broom. And It's the Season of the Witch is a letterpress plate from Hero Arts from this year. So I had a couple of them. I could do Best Witches, but It's a Season of the Witch fit in my little space there. And this is just called Spooky Season. And the bats again, I'll show you in just a second. But to make this move, that is from the Whirly Wheel from Karen Burniston. And I just used an acetate tab here instead of a black one. To me, that gives it just a little more realistic look of the witch actually flying around here. So I had fun with that, and of course I had to use at least one more of Karen's mechanical dies, and I love the sentiment on this one. Bats are just Halloween butterflies. That's a different way of looking at a bat. And when I open this up, I've got all those bats flying. Now this one, again, I played with the inside a little bit. When I first did this arch, I made it out of printed cardstock that looked like a nighttime sky. So on the arch pop-up, which is from Karen Burniston, I cut all the pieces out of cardstock, had it attached, everything basically done, and I was like, oh, too dark, just too dark. And it didn't really accentuate those bats flying up. So I tore the arch out and I had all my bats attached with glue dots, because in that way I could move them around, and the glue dots stuck really, really good to the acetate. But when I made the arch out of acetate, I mean, that was just such a difference. I mean, you really see those bats much better, and you get the feeling that they're all coming towards you. Bat butterflies. So for the bats, this is a retired die. I love it because it's got some big ones in here. It's called Bat Crazy. So all of my bats, from the small ones to this great big one on front, are from this die set. And this is the one that I used for Season of the Witch. Those dice, or those bats, came from this die set as well. You could use any border that you want, really, for the flowers. This is not a Halloween border by any means. This first one I came across, again from Tim, Flower Field. So it was nice and high, filled up the front of that. The paper is from Michaels. I did find that this year, so it was just luck that I had that in my stash. That is from a paper pad from them this year. And then 'Tis the Season to Get Spooky. I didn't want a really big sentiment in here to take away from just that onrush of bats. That's from the Halloween Sentiments from LDRS. This is called, let's see here, Halloween Sentiments, right there in front of me. And then finally on the outside, I had fun with all the different fonts. So Bats is from another vault set from Tim from last year called Vault Coffin Box. So maybe if you don't have this, you have the original font set. Are Just is from the Tiny Type. Halloween I had as one word to save me a little time instead of cutting out each individual letter. This is from Photoplay and called Trick or Treat Halloween. I did not use the shadow or the background dye, just the letters, but I did lay down, let's see, you can't see it. I kept what was like the dropout piece, laid that down, and then I could line up those letters perfectly without having to guess. And finally, butterflies, I thought I'd make that just a little more fancy, or I don't know, a cursive style of font. And that's from an old set from Tim Cutout Script. So all lowercase letters, but that worked perfectly for my butterflies. So again, very happy with how this one turned out in the end. All those bats flying up. So that is Halloween for this year. I'm always sort of sad when November 1st rolls around, even though I enjoy, making for the winter holidays, but Halloween really is my favorite holiday. The candy, the costumes, all of it. So thank you for joining me today, and maybe this will give you some ideas for next year's Halloween, since we're almost to the big night for this year. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again in a future video.